One fine summer's morning, when all the pensioners of the village climbed aboard a coach for their annual trip to the seaside, little did they know that there was a surprise in store for them. Worzel Gummidge had stowed away in the luggage compartment. There, in the darkness, he found the pensioners' packed lunches and chortled happily to himself as he scoffed the lot. As the coach drew up on the seafront, he nipped smartly out and sat on a bollard, watching with amusement as the pensioners took out their hampers and lifted the lids. "Hey, look at this!" one shouted, fishing out an apple core and the remains of a well-chewed chicken leg. Another pensioner stared aghast at a half-eaten pork pie and an empty crisp packet. They began frantically hauling the other hampers out of the luggage compartment, opening each one as it tumbled to the ground. "Why, it's gone!" they gasped in astonishment. "All of it! The old blessed picnic!" And they stared around them to see the scarecrow ambling along the seafront with a half-eaten apple in one hand and in the other an iced bun with a large bite taken out of it. "Seagulls!" shouted Worzel Gummidge knowledgeably. They looked at one another in bewilderment. "Seagulls?" they echoed. "Oh, aye. Thieving varmints, so they are. You take a tip from me. Watch out for a seagull with cake crumbs on its beak." And tossing his apple core with a plop into the sea, he wandered happily on his way. As he took in the sights and sounds of the seaside, his eye fell on an ancient fishing vessel moored a few yards away, and he strolled closer to make out its name, the Saucy Nancy, painted bright red in curling script on the bow. There was a carved wooden figurehead on the ship, a big, buxom lady in flowing diaphanous robes the colour of damp seaweed, her brawny arms folded across her chest. Close by on the harbour wall perched a brightly coloured parrot. "Ahoy there!" called a fruity voice as the scarecrow wandered past. The scarecrow bent forward, frowning, to look closely at the parrot. "That's funny. How come you can talk without your beak moving? Well, come to think on it, how come you can talk at all, you just being a stupid old bird?" "It's not him, you turnip-headed landlubber!" roared the fruity voice. "It's me! Behind ya!" And a horny hand tapped him on the shoulder. The scarecrow jumped a foot in the air and turned to find behind him the figurehead of the Saucy Nancy, her muscular arms folded across her deep chest and a broad smile on her weather-beaten mahogany face. "Well, I'll go to market in a basket of duck eggs." The Saucy Nancy looked him up and down. "Well, before you does, have you got any tobacco?" she asked. The scarecrow narrowed his eyes. "Well, I might have, and then again I might not. It depends on what you got, innit?" The Saucy Nancy thought for a moment, and then dug deep into the folds of her costume and hauled out a crumpled paper bag. "Humbugs?" she offered. Worzel Gummidge smacked his lips. "Humbugs? Oh, aye. Now I likes humbugs, so I does." He crammed a handful of humbugs into his mouth and munched contentedly as the Saucy Nancy lit her pipe. "Well now," she said, "with my humbugs and your baccy, we makes a fine pair. How about you and me getting married?" "Married? Getting married? I can't marry you, missus. I'm spoken for." "Spoken for? Who'd have you? Except me, that is." "Aunt Sally. That's who'd have me. If I'd know where she's got to. Why, I think she went to Romania, or else Egypt." "Oh, no, she ain't there, dearie. 'Cause I've been there, and I'd have seen her. Oh, been all over, I have. Iceland, Denmark, Portsmouth. I haven't seen her nowhere. Oh, she's probably drowned. So, you might as well marry your Saucy Nancy." I say, missus," Worzel went on, as they strolled away along the quay. "Yes, dearie?" "Why for is you hanging hold of me arm? You ain't going to fall down, is ye?" "Ah, that's as may be. I ain't got no legs, see." "Well, of course you got legs, missus. Everybody's got legs. Excepting worms, and they don't need them." "Neither does figureheads. Lash you to the prow of a schooner in a North Sea gale, and you wouldn't need no legs neither.
Excepting sea legs, that is.
Well, how does he get about then if he ain't got no legs?
Well, I shouldn't really show you till we're married. But when I comes ashore, I has these, see?
And she shyly hitched up her skirt to reveal that she was mounted on an old set of pram wheels.
Well, I'll go lie down in a trough of sheep then.
The Saucy Nancy dropped her damp seaweed green skirt again and lowered her eyes with a bashful little giggle.
Well, you'll have to marry me now. Now you see me wheels, she simpered.
Oh, you're all balmy, missus. That's what you are. I keeps telling you. I's going to marry Aunt Sally.
And I keeps telling you that you can't, 'cause she's drowned. So give me one good reason why you shouldn't marry your Saucy Nancy.
You're ugly.
Oh, thank you. So are you.
And you smells of fish.
Well, of course I smells of fish. You'd smell of fish if you'd served all your life afull the mast. Anyway, what's wrong with a bit of fish? I expect you wouldn't say no to a few whelks and a pint of winkles, eh?
Oh, no. No, that I wouldn't, missus.
Well, then, I knows where there's a whelk stall.
Arm in arm, they lurched off, the Scarecrow with his strange, staggering gait, and the Saucy Nancy rattling bumpily along beside him on her pram wheels. She led the Scarecrow past the roundabout, past the rifle range, almost to the end of the pier, where the sea grumbled and heaved beneath their feet, until they rounded a corner and came on the tantalizing smell of cockles and winkles, mussels and shrimps and prawns. The owner of the stall spotted them coming.
Oi, you!
He bellowed as Worzel Gummidge grabbed a handful of whelks and crammed them into his mouth.
Get you thieving hands off!
The Scarecrow put his shoulder to the figurehead and wheeled her quickly away round the side of the stall as the angry stallholder set off after them. They doubled back, twice round the roundabout and all along the pier, and were just about to escape round the back of the coconut shy when the Scarecrow stopped dead in his tracks, gaping in surprise at a pair of legs sticking up into the air from a tea chest.
Here, why we hove to, shipmate?
Half a tick, missus. I'd recognize them ankles anywhere,
said Worzel Gummidge, grabbing hold of one of the protruding legs.
Get an hold, an Eve.
Saucy Nancy did as she was told, and with a great tug they yanked Aunt Sally out of the tea chest and stood her on her feet. She didn't look at all grateful.
This is too much, she exclaimed. That common old Scarecrow again. And let go of me at once, or I'll pull your stupid head off.
Well, time for fun and games later, Aunt Sally,
said the Scarecrow seriously.
We got to run for it.
And taking one elbow each, he and the Saucy Nancy propelled Aunt Sally away down the pier just as the whelk stall owner appeared with the proprietor of the coconut shy at his side.
There they are,
yelled the angry whelk stall man.
Daisies and buttercups. They runs around like mad bullocks,
Worzel Gummidge gasped. And once again, grabbing the reluctant Aunt Sally by the elbows, they began to bolt for it. The little fishing village was a maze of winding streets and twisting alleyways, and the trio had to weave around like mad March hares to escape. But at last they emerged into a quiet square where a few of the villagers were sunning themselves at tables outside a tiny pub. A sailor glanced across the square and spotted them.
"Here, Captain!"
he shouted.
"That there's your figurehead off the Saucy Nancy, ain't it?"
The old salt's eyes popped, and he spilled his beer as he jumped to his feet.
"It bloomin' is,"
he muttered, setting off across the square with a couple of his mates at his heels. The fugitive trio looked at one another with alarm and began to gallop away, cutting up a narrow path between two rows of tall houses, just as Mr. Peters and Mrs. Braithwaite led the pensioners into the square from one end and the whelk stall owner and the coconut shy man raced in from the other. In a minute, the quiet little square was a madhouse, with pensioners and fishermen and fairgroundmen hopelessly entangled, pushing and shoving one another in their frantic attempts to find out which way their quarry had gone. By the time they'd sorted themselves out, Worzel Gummidge, Saucy Nancy, and Aunt Sally were well away, and had made it to the safety of a tiny park on top of a hill overlooking the little fishing village. The Saucy Nancy looked around at the park.
"Well, me hearties, what shall we do now, eh?"
Aunt Sally looked down her nose. "We are going home," she announced firmly.
Aunt Sally? Worzel.
You stupid, ignorant scarecrow. Well, you're home, of course. You don't think I'm going back to that common fairground, do you?
Back to my home? Oh, if you knew how I've longed to hear them words from your lips, Aunt Sally. Oh, I will take you back to my home, humble though it is. And you shall have my best chair, and the best sack of potatoes for to sleep on. And tomorrow morning I shall ask the Crow Man to marry us. And then we'll be Mr. and Mrs. Worzel Gummidge.
Yes, we'll talk about that later. Come along. She took the scarecrow's arm and was about to move away with him when the Saucy Nancy suddenly wheeled herself in front of them. Hold on, me hearties. Where do you think you're going?
Back to Scatterbrook to get married. It was very nice meeting you, Saucy Nancy. It was my pleasure.
I see. So now you want to cast me away like a broken lobster pot. Is that it? Aunt Sally sneered. There is a resemblance, now that you mention it. The Saucy Nancy stood her ground and puffed smoke into Aunt Sally's face. I wasn't talking to you, you fossilized door-knocker. But now that I am talking to you, I'll have you know that this here scarecrow happens to be my intended. She grabbed the scarecrow's free arm and began to heave on it as if she was pulling up an anchor chain. Let go of him, yelled Aunt Sally, pulling him back by the other arm. He's mine! 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 Heaving and hauling the worried scarecrow this way and that, backwards and forwards between them so violently that tufts of straw began to come loose.
Here, mind me, Straw. You'll pull me to pieces, so you will. Here, let go of me arms. I'm coming to bits. Look, let me go, and I'll marry both of you. Ah! Now you've done it,
he cried, as the two females fell back, clutching handfuls of straw.
Help!
He croaked, making off down the hill as fast as his legs would carry him. Wait for me, shipmate! Cried the figurehead. There was a nasty gleam in Aunt Sally's eye. Oh, so you want to go after him, do you? Then so you shall. And she gave the Saucy Nancy a heave that sent her rolling after the scarecrow with her wheels spinning. In the fishing village, the pensioners and the sailors, the whelk stall owner and the coconut shy man, Mr. Peters and Mrs. Braithwaite were sunning themselves outside the little inn overlooking the harbour, when suddenly the Saucy Nancy careered into view at a terrible pace, rattled along the quayside, over the cobbles, and straight in through the front door of the pub, where it came to a stop against the bar with a mighty crash, bringing bottles and glasses smashing down on every side. Worzel Gummidge and Aunt Sally, arriving hard on the heels of the Saucy Nancy, took advantage of the distraction to creep into the luggage compartment of the coach and stowed themselves secretly away behind the empty picnic baskets to wait for their lift home. The coach rolled lazily back through the countryside, dropping the pensioners one by one at their homes as it passed through the village. And when only the farmer and his wife were left, Mr. Peters drove down the narrow lane to Scatterbrook Farm, pulling up outside the gate to the yard. John and Sue ran out to greet them as they clambered down and stretched their legs. "Did you have a nice time?" cried Sue. Mrs. Braithwaite chuckled. "Well, let's say an eventful time. Still, I think the old folk enjoyed it." "Well, I could do with a cup of tea," Mr. Peters announced, "before I run over to Mr. Shepherd's." Did you fetch us any rock?" asked John as the adults made for the kitchen. "Is that all you've been thinking about all day long? Go on in. Look in the boot," laughed his father. They ran round the coach and threw up the hatch of the luggage compartment. There, sound asleep, with a blissful smile and a lot of pink sticky mess on her face, lay Aunt Sally, clutching a half-eaten stick of rock. "It's Aunt Sally," cried Sue, "and she's eaten half our rock."
"Oh, aye,"
said Worzel, suddenly sitting up.
"and I'll eat the other half. And thanks very much."